So the term I hear thrown out all the time is the valley of death. And I truly despise that term because it just sounds scary and it provides nothing of value. So the framework and kind of the analogy I'm going to run through today is what I like to call the Bermuda Triangle. So it's made up of three different islands, and I'll get into what those islands are, like who's involved with them, what programs do they run, if they run any, and how to like find some on ramps to actually work with them. And we'll do a deeper dive into all three of these islands and talk about tying them together. So first and foremost is the framework. And why the Bermuda Triangle, you might ask? Oh, well, let me tell you. What I see happening is companies, as they move into working with the Department of Defense, they get lost between the islands. So let's talk about what they are and how we actually connect them. So the first one is going to be research and development. So this island primarily made up of like the research labs. I'll lump AFWorks and SpaceWorks and those types of organizations into this because they're stealing or using most of their budget from the SBIR pot of money for their programs. The second island is operation and maintenance. So your actual operators and warfighters. So these are the folks actually doing the mission. This is where you find product market fit, who's actually going to be using your technology. And the final piece, so just put a nice little P up here, program offices, also procurement funding, a lot of what they have there. So being successful in the Department of Defense is putting all three of these together. So again, this next segment, Valley of Death, not helpful. Let's start breaking down the different islands of the Bermuda Triangle. So island number one, research and development. Again, the research labs have a lot of the research and development funding. This is typically where we see a lot of traction happen. So in other videos with the choo-choo train, we have traction, momentum, and scale. So your first couple of contract awards, first funding opportunity, a lot of those are coming out of these organizations. So we've got the research labs, we've got AFWorks and SpaceWorks, and they're putting out programs like the Small Business Innovation Research Program, broad agency announcements, sometimes challenges. So a couple different flavors, a couple different types. We really focus on SBIR, especially the open topic, because it's just been a great kind of on ramp to begin working here. So the problem is they're on their own island because especially like I'll just do research, Air Force Research Lab as one example. They will be working on capabilities for 2030 or 2035 or 2040. And there's very little communication happening with the actual warfighter. So part of it is like their mission and their focus trying to really be the leading edge of new technologies. But at the same time, there's a lot of technologies out there that are not currently within the Department of Defense that could immediately benefit the warfighter. So they're on their own island. So with SBIR, just an easy example, the research labs, like they have scheduled rounds where you can go and apply. And so it's nice to have like a clean opportunity with a due date that you can go and submit a proposal for. And that's one of the many on-ramps here. So in the next segment, let's talk about the warfighter. Again, Valley of Death isn't helping anyone. This island of the Bermuda Triangle is where you actually find product market fit. So again, coming from being an Air Force vet, easiest example is like this is the bases. This is the squadrons, the groups, the wings, the actual warfighter doing the mission. So for this island, they actually only really get funding called operation and maintenance dollars. So it's funding to do the day-to-day missions and not much above and beyond that. So they don't have purchasing power, but they have all of the need for the different capabilities, different technology. So again, not a huge amount of budget. How do we find and work with them? So with these warfighters, something you need to understand is that every base has a public affairs office. So if you start Googling around, you can see, what projects do they have going on? What innovation efforts are they interested in? What capability gaps do they have? You can also find out like, hey, this squadron focuses on special operations, or this base, has a really big special operations function. This one has like nuclear and a lot of security that goes around it. Some more focused on logistics. So intel. So all that to say, like you can find out a lot of these different squadrons, like what their mission set is, what they're focused on, what different flavors of like intelligence are they interested in. The other piece is we've seen a lot of increase in their participation in going to events, at least since I got out 7+ years ago now. These warfighters like going to events like Air Force Association. On the Army side, AUSA is a really big one. But there's a lot of great events where they're actually showing up, and half or more of thousands and thousands of people are wearing the uniform and are these operators. There are different events for kind of all of these based on like what function you're trying to get to, what island you're trying to connect with. So just know like there's different flavors of events where the labs will talk about some of their events and conferences and things that they're going to, things they're going to, etc. Like meet the PEOs, meet the program offices. So that's island 2. So third segment, third island. Again, Valley of Death, not helping anyone. Let's talk about this island of the Bermuda Triangle. So these program offices, this is much more tied to the big PPB&E cycles. So planning, programming, budget, and execution, going through congressional processes and multi-year appropriations and budgeting, all these functions. Now, the thing here is they aren't going to be using the technology. And again, neither is this island usually. Always some little caveat. And this is meant to be like an 80% solution here to just kind of understand what you should be focusing on. So the program offices, they're spending tens, hundreds, even billions of dollars for enterprise-wide solutions, for new weapon systems, for new software capabilities. So the program offices are the big spenders. So again, ways to find out like who these are. There's a list of program offices out there, and under the PEO, Program Executive Office, there's a bunch of programs underneath it. So there's like a general SES level person running the program, like the PEO, and then a bunch of these programs underneath it. And so there's, again, a lot of information you can find out on the internet that tells you like what are the different programs, what kind of capabilities and technologies are they working with and using, spending money on. So in this final segment, again, Valley of Death isn't helping us. Hopefully this Bermuda Triangle and the different islands, better analogy for you to understand. So let's get into one, what are the different funding types that they have and what that means? And then two, how do we actually tie these together using our framework, the traction, moving to momentum and scale? How do we actually progress by leveraging these different islands and tying them together, and how to actually tie them together? So first, funding. Over here at the Warfighter, so again, they have the actual operational need. Product market fit is happening here. They're going to use your technology. The problem is they only have operation and maintenance dollars. Again, it's helping basically fund day-to-day operations of the base, of the wing, of the Delta, things like that. So they don't have a ton of funding above and beyond kind of day-to-day operations. Now, we've talked about momentum season, so I'll come back to that in just a minute. But there is like fallout funding plays that you can make here. So operation and maintenance dollars. At the labs, research and development funding, they have both R&D, but they also have O&M because they have day-to-day operations and things like that as well. So they might be able to, they primarily are spending research and development, but may be able to also tap into operation and maintenance dollars. Now, I think a big misunderstanding here is that the labs, so I'll give the Air Force example. Total Air Force research and development budget, upper, I think, $37 billion. The B. Crazy. The Air Force Research Lab, again, rough numbers from what I remember researching, about 6 to 7 billion that they're spending here. So where's the rest of the 30 billion? It's actually sitting here at the program offices. So one, a lot of different procurement funding to buy new capabilities, bring new weapon systems and all kinds of capabilities online. But also a ton of research and development dollars going there, and then also access to operation and maintenance dollars as well. So they really have all three. So let's jump back and go into the framework. So how do we tie these together to gain traction and then move to momentum and finally reach scale? So we talked a little bit about SBIR. We like the open topics, and I'll tell you, because the standard kind of specific topics, the way those are typically run is you'll be assigned a technical point of contact here. So the TPOC usually resides within the lab. And so you're completely isolated to this island, and it's a lot more work to then tie in these other islands to get that traction and momentum. What we like about the open topics that AFWORK started 6 years ago now, something like that, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, they have an opportunity, especially as you go to the phase 2 through the customer memorandum process, to actually get signers and signatures primarily from the warfighter, but also potentially from the program offices as well. So you have some funding coming from this island to actually support and build out the capability that the warfighter wants, while also maybe taking into consideration some of the bigger like integration concerns or scalability concerns that would come from like reaching the program office level. So for traction, again, really like the open topics because it does allow us to start pulling in and connecting these islands that weren't connected before. In other videos, I've talked about how it's momentum season. The reason for that is twofold. So one, going back to the fallout funding, it's the right timing here for this, but it's also around the time that they're starting to do some of this planning and programming for future fiscal years. Now this is 2, 3, 4 years down the road. But with that said, they're kind of going through those cycles. So it's good if you're further along to be having those conversations about future programs of record, palming, future budgets, but also in the shorter term, operation and maintenance dollars and going through that fallout funding process to grab some of that both here and at the program office levels. And some general rules of thumb, couple like up to a couple $100,000 here, up to several million, 6, 7, 8 million even at the program office level. Because again, just the nature of how big their budgets are and what they're spending, they can get to larger parts of money. Now, the other piece that I really liked that we've seen with AFWorks, SpaceWorks, now with Army SBIR Catalyst, got Navy Catapult. So there's a lot of these funding from this island that, especially, let's go TACFI, StratFi, Catalyst. So especially StratFi and Catalyst, they are requiring you to pull in this program office support and tying in the warfighter operator as well. So that's why it's such a good tie-in and helps us move out of just traction and just some research and development dollars with the research island to pulling in these other islands. So that's why, again, the timing of those programs where we're at right now, many of them like Catalyst just opened, TACFI is about to open, StratFi is going to be here before we know it, allows us to tie together all three of these islands and ultimately to reach scale that primarily is just going to reside here within the program offices. Are there exceptions? Are there other offices that could potentially help with this that are outside? Are there ways to feed new requirements into the programs? Yes, that's like a whole different piece that we'll break down in other videos. But again, to reach scale, it really comes down to is the program office budgeting for and going through these really big, longer term cycles to get massive amounts of funding for this capability. So again, using traction and momentum programs to develop that relationship and fill the void, fill the funding while they're going through the really big muscle movements to get the really big contract vehicles. Like that's how this all kind of ties together. So with that said, thank you so much for watching. If you've got other topics or other breakdowns that you want to see of this framework or others, please drop a comment. Love to dive into those. If you know other folks that would benefit from this framework, please share with them. Thanks again for watching.